Hello, thank you so much for being here. My name is Tristana Perkle. I'm the ED of the School Garden Support Organization Network, the SGSO Network. And this is the district-led school garden programs, part one of 2 webinars focused all on garden programs that are led, staffed by an individual or many individuals at the district's school district office. And today we're focusing specifically on organization and management of these programs. So if you could go to the next slide, please, just a couple of housekeeping items. Thank you. This will be recorded and will be shared via email and in our recording library on our website. So you will receive an email after this webinar, as well as a link to our resource handout, which I will put into the chat momentarily. This is a document that has all of the relevant links for the webinar today, so that will be helpful for you all to use. So I can chat with you all, but you can't chat back with each other yet, but we'll get that working. So if you, this webinar will be for an hour and 15 minutes. We'll do Q&A in the last 15 minutes. I welcome you and encourage you to ask your questions in the Q&A section as your questions come up, so we can organize those and ask them at the end. So feel free as things come up to put into the Q&A. And then if you could please share your feedback via our feedback form. I will also put that into the chat. It's really helpful for us to know what you all think about this webinar and any future webinar topics that might be helpful for you all. So your feedback is very welcomed. Next slide, please. Wanted to highlight that our next newsletter, we have a newsletter coming out every other month that is a deep dive into various topics within the school garden movement, focusing on highlighting different resources, videos, different member spotlights, both within the SGSO network and also outside of the SGSO network. And the topic for the May newsletter is culturally relevant teaching in the garden. So you can sign up for our newsletter on our website. We also, via our newsletter, share things that are coming up within the network and things that you might want to know about outside of our every other month newsletter. Next slide, please. We are super excited to announce that the Growing School Gardens Summit has been announced and will be happening in San Diego, March 15th through 18th next year in 2024. This is hosted by the Sprouts Healthy Communities Foundation in partnership with Life Lab and the SGSO Network. The new 2024 website is live and includes all the upcoming dates. As you'll see there, the scholarship application as well as the call for presenters will be available next month, and those deadlines will be in July to submit both the scholarship application as well as the call for presenters. So be sure to check that out and hope to see you there. Then today's webinar is all focused on district-led school garden programs, which was a focus of the SGSO Leadership Institute that happened last December. The SGSO Leadership Institute is hosted by Life Lab and Kids Foundation and is a week-long leadership development opportunity for leaders of school garden support organizations or entities that support multiple school gardens. And the particular focus of last December's institute was all on organizations that help run district-wide school garden programs. So they're truly supporting and a part of school gardens across the whole district, or focusing on school districts themselves who are in attendance at the Institute. So we're, when we talk about school district-led school garden programs, it's kind of a newer or more unique approach. And something that I think we all can agree on is kind of the goal that school districts or school gardens are led by, run by, supported by staff at the school district, that school gardens can be an embedded, integrated part of every school, as part of the curriculum and part of the culture. So we are doing a 2-part webinar series to highlight the specific challenges and opportunities when school district staff run, and support school gardens across their district. So that's what we'll be focusing on here today. The SGSO Network is a partner in the SGSO Leadership Institute and supports the kind of ongoing documentation and learnings outside of and continuing after the Institute. So we are running some peer learning communities for district-led school garden programs, as well as a couple of other topics, and keeping the learnings and the support going for these leaders and previous leaders of the Institute. So as a result, you can go to the next slide. We're doing some webinars to highlight the participants and the leaders who attended the Leadership Institute. And the Leadership Institute, I meant to say, is an application process to attend. It's usually about 50 individuals from about 20 to 25 organizations. So if you are interested in a part of an SGSO, be in the lookout for when the application process will be open for the next Leadership Institute. It'll probably be end of the summer, and the next institute will be in December or January of this year, or in 2024. So we're highlighting institute participants in our upcoming webinars, as well as in building some promising practices that you'll see up on our website over the course of the year. But our next webinar will be part 2 of our series focusing on engaging your district community, and that will be on May 24th. And then on June 21st, we will be highlighting school garden professional development, again, highlighting participants from the Leadership Institute. So with that, I'm going to introduce our speakers for today. Each speaker is going to share a little bit about themselves and about their district, and then each of them is going to dive into kind of a subtopic all within the topic of a district and organization at a school district, school garden programs. So I'm going to pass it off to Ilana.
Hello, everyone. So wonderful to be with you all today. My name is Ilana Marder-Epstein, and I am the school garden specialist with Chicago Public Schools. I work within the Office of Student Health and Wellness, and we are the 3rd largest district in the country. So we have over 650 schools here in Chicago. We have over 300,000 students. And about 2/3 of our schools have garden infrastructure. So around 400 schools in Chicago have gardens. And I work on a very strong team of 2 overseeing school garden supports broadly for Chicago. And we are paid and funded by the school district. So you will hear from me more a little bit later. It's wonderful to be with you all.
Okay, I'm Phyllicia Moore. I'm with Houston ISD. We're in Nutrition Services Department. I have a big team that I work with, but I am the one and only person that manages student school garden. And we have 274 schools. We are the 4th largest school district in the United States, the largest in the state of Texas. We have 194,000 students, and we have 109 school gardens and counting.
Hi, everyone. My name is Cassidy Boardman with Upland Unified School District. I'm the Farm to School Program Manager within Nutrition Services. We are in Southern California. We have 14 schools, so by no means largest in state, county, or country, but we have each of our schools does have a garden. We just completed that this spring break, which is really exciting. We have about 11,000 students in our district. We have 1 full-time district staff that supports school gardens, and then we have 2 part-time school garden coordinators and 2 food corps service members on our team. We're going to start by hearing from Ilana with Chicago Public Schools.
Okay, yes. So I'm going to speak to you today about our work done at Chicago Public Schools. This is a photo from one of our Farm to School events where students are able to visit local urban agriculturalists and learn about what is happening in our city in regards to our local food system. So yes, I'm very excited to be here. Next slide. Just a overview of what the garden landscape looks like in our city. Here you can see there are about 400 schools with gardens mapped out in Chicago. So this provides a lot of opportunity for our city to engage with young people around where food comes from and offer more green space for our students to build relationships with. Next slide. So again, just a bit of an overview of how my position works and how it works within the district. So I am embedded within the Office of Student Health and Wellness, and we're on a health promotions team that views school gardens as an essential part to student well-being. We work closely with our nutrition services team, as well as our capitals team and facilities, kind of managing different components of what supports need to happen for a garden to be built. So our facilities team runs more of the infrastructure side. Nutrition team runs more of the nutrition programming, and that's where our overlap is there. So we work with those other departments to provide successful gardens through our district. We manage the Farm to School program, which each month it highlights a different urban agriculturalist or farm or food service professional in the city and either brings that professional into the classroom or takes the classroom out to the farm. And then we also work with a number of really wonderful partners who do direct supports in our schools, both nutrition partners and garden partners, to really help bridge different opportunities and resources between schools and the outside community to help support gardens. Next slide. Yes, that slide, perfect. So what we do, so what our work looks like is we provide professional development opportunities for teachers who are interested in integrating garden education into their classrooms and curriculum. We host seasonal workshops. This year, we're really focusing on creating a large summit opportunity for our city, all surrounding garden-based education, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. But we work to create different opportunities for teachers to learn more and build their capacity within food literacy and bringing it into their classroom. We also run the Eat What You Grow certification program, which is a food safety certification program that allows schools to grow edible produce on their school grounds. This is to ensure that all produce is healthy and safe for consumption and safe for consumption within the classroom and cafeteria. We also run our Farm to School program, and we're focusing on a few different sustainable agriculture labs in our city. So we're creating different hubs that focus on different components of the agricultural system to be able to host professional development for teachers in these different locations, school locations across our city. And I'll talk more about that a little bit later as well. And then we support schools on an individual case-by-case basis. supporting them with technical assistance if they would like to start a new garden or expand their existing garden. They will reach out to our team. We'll have a consultation meeting with them and then a site visit to review the different opportunities available to those schools. All of our support is individualized, tailored. We're really trying to meet schools where they're at and work with them on their goals for green space and gardening. So there's no one size fits all for gardening in Chicago. We also have a district-wide seed bank, and we send seeds out via our mail run, like the inter-mail system within Chicago Public Schools, and do material distributions as we get donations for things like garden tables or soil and things like that. Next slide. So today I'm going to talk with you all about two of our specific supports around tools and toolkits, our online resources for schools. We take a tiered approach to services, which you'll learn a little bit about later on in the webinar. But really what that means is we think about what services can we provide to all schools. And then once we provide universal services, because we're only a team of 2 for 650 schools, we want to make sure that we have content available to all of our schools, and then schools can self-select as to what resources they need from there. Next slide. So one of our online resources is our Eat What You Grow manual, and the Eat What You Grow program is a food safety program. We are hosting our training on a district-wide online platform that teachers can access on their own time. It is self-paced, and we are offering technical assistance via monthly office hours. And so this food safety manual is a 91-page document. It is very lengthy and in-depth and goes into all of the different processes that one needs to make sure that gardens are safe for student consumption. And this is in compliance with our local school wellness policy. So I wanted to highlight this because I think that Eat What You Grow programs or garden to cafeteria programs, which really that's what this is, are launching to be a large movement across the nation. And Chicago has put a lot of work into creating this manual and creating this program so that we're delivering really valuable content for teachers in a way that's also easy to understand and digest. So the link is here in this webinar and will be shared in the slides, which will be shared out later. So if anyone on this call has interest in learning more about garden to cafeteria and what kind of language and policy exists in different cities, Chicago has a really great resource with our Eat What You Grow program. Next slide. So we also created our school garden toolkit, which goes through a number of different tutorials and how-tos of how to create a school garden in Chicago. It shares our mission and vision for school gardens at Chicago Public Schools, which I think is also really important for creating kind of a cohesive movement and organized sense of belonging and purpose towards creating more valuable green space for our students. And it also has Chicago specific content on how to grow a garden. So we use this a lot in our technical assistance when we're working with schools on a case-by-case basis and they have specific questions. This helps us deliver the information that they need to get started. Next slide. So I mentioned that we also manage 2 sustainable agriculture labs, or work with 2 sustainable agriculture labs in Chicago. That is where I am reporting from right now. So I am in King College Prep, which is a high school on the south side of Chicago, where we are developing an indoor grow lab space, testing out different items and growing techniques that are available to our teachers for indoor in-classroom use. And then we host professional development here, training teachers on how to do that indoor growing. So you can see on the right-hand side of this slide that there is a greenhouse in this space. We run an after-school club here, so get to integrate a little bit with students as well, and then share best practices out with our teachers. And then Prosser High School is an amazing high school on the west side of Chicago that is run by a really dedicated staff at Prosser, and they have a community garden and school garden where they are trialing many, many different outdoor growing techniques, and we host professional development there. So we're trying to also focus on where are our regional hubs that can share information, best practices out to the surrounding region or out to Chicago, out to the larger teacher community to continue to build momentum in this work. Next slide. So along the lines of professional development, this is our really exciting professional development opportunity. If anyone on this call is in the Chicagoland area, please join us for the Green and Growing Summit. This is a day-long event that's focused on environmental, sustainable, and garden education in the city of Chicago. We will have 18 different workshops, over 35 speakers, and a really fabulous day that our partners will also be involved in, just to continue to build the movement here in Chicago around our green and growing spaces and connecting young people, connecting community, and building education around growing food, environmental issues, and also with a focus on farmed animals this year. So we're hosting it at the Chicago High School for Agricultural Sciences, which is another really amazing school in our district that provides agricultural training to students. And they have a very large veterinary program with many animals. So it's going to be a really exciting day. And if you're in Chicagoland, come join us. If you're not, we hope to connect otherwise. So yeah, that's a little bit about what we're doing here in Chicago and how our district interacts with the schools and school gardens in our city. And thank you for being here today and listening to my little piece of this presentation. And I'll hand it off to the next presenter.
Hi, so I'm Phyllicia again with Houston ISD, located here in Houston, Texas. We have the Food and Agriculture Literacy Program, and it is a very intense program where we have 2 chefs, 2 dietitians, and 4 agricultural workers. I'm the only one that works with school gardens. We have one that does farm field trips to our school district farm, and then we have a crop production manager. So we have a pretty intensive team, but I'll go into detail of how we got organized and how we're continuing to get organized. So we can go to the next slide. So Our food and agriculture literacy program runs through Nutrition Services Department, and we serve about 270 meals to students every day. And our goal and mission is to make sure that students have more than a consumer relationship with food. So students are taught food, how their food is processed, distributed, and the impact it has on their personal, family, and community health. We encompass 3 elements, which is agriculture, nutrition, and school farm experience. With all of those things is experiential learning. And we can go into detail about that a little bit later on another webinar, but today we're going to talk about how our MTSS in school program support. So we can go to the next slide. So I have to tell you the story that we started at the cusp of 2019 of COVID. 2020 really. We started in 2020 with at the beginning of COVID with 1 elementary school, 1 middle school, and 1 high school. And every year from there, we have added on more schools, as you can see based off of this graph. This year we have about 30 schools altogether. Next year we have reached out to, and other schools have reached out to us, and we're now at 109 out of the 274 schools within a school district. So if there is a need and want for school gardens, and there's a need and want for school gardens in every level, middle school, high school, elementary, and early childhood centers. So how we got organized was, like I said, I just started in this program this year. And starting in this program this year, I came in from the classroom aspect, and for a little bit, I was running all over the place, trying to figure out what it is that I needed to do, find all of these schools, talk to everyone. It was a madhouse. It was full of anxiety and stress, and my car was stressed out. I think I had about 2 oil changes and a tire rotation within like the first 3 months I have been here. So I was like, there has to be a better way of doing this. Luckily, I made it to the, you can go to the next slide. Luckily, I made it to, and I got accepted into the SGSO Leadership Institute, and where I met Ilana and Sam with Washington, D.C. School district. And they were telling me about the multi-tier system of support, explained it and everything. And I thought to myself, there's a light bulb that just went out, because that's the same multi-tier system that we use in the classroom. And I'm a former classroom teacher, so it made sense to actually use it for school gardens and provide support for them, just as much as we use them to support students in their learning needs. So, with that said, every school district, whenever I visit or they send an email, I send out newsletters, and I let them know that if they need consultation, go ahead and book an appointment with me. So they book an appointment, and everyone starts off in tier 3, because I walk into it and I just assume that no one knows or has any idea. And it's not to say anything bad about them. It's just so that I can start off with a blank slate. Once I look at everything and I figure out if they have a garden, they have a water source, walkways, a few other basic needs, then I move them down to tier 2. And then if they actually don't need anything from me, they're ADA compliant, they already have all the nuts and screws, they actually have a garden educator over there, they're running their program with the entire school, they move to tier 1. And there are very few schools that move to tier 1 where all they need is a newsletter and additional resources. So how I got here, we have a logic model. We can go to the next slide. A logic model helped me to figure out how to put this all together, which is the target audience, inputs, activities, outputs, and activity evaluation. So in our target audience, I had to figure out, do the schools have a school garden, want to improve a school garden, have an existing school garden that needs a lot of help or little help, or they want to start a school garden program. Then from there, we have our inputs. It's like, what activities are we already doing? What activities do we need to create? And then the activities were, what are you already doing, services that you're already providing or hope to provide? And then our outputs, we ask the question, what are the current results, or what do we hope the results will be? And finally, our activity evaluation is how will we measure the success of those activities and the validity of that program? So these are the questions I asked myself, but I didn't come to these questions by myself. Like I said, I started in August. So there were some things that were already in place before I actually got here. So one of those things is a school garden census. Let's move to the next slide. In that school garden census, we had like 14 questions. Out of that 14 questions, about 6 of them were directed straight to the garden and what they had. If the school garden, if it existed, if it needed, if they wanted to start a new program, and if they needed improvement, or they just don't want a school garden altogether. So we sent this school garden census out to all 275 schools. Out of the 275 schools, 80 replied back, which is about 30% of the school district, and I'm okay with that because there was a massive amount of data that came out of there. For instance, what are the students doing in the school garden? What do you hope the students are doing in the school garden? What do you want to get out of this? What kind of trainings are you looking for? And a lot of teachers just want to know, how do we organize and plan around the school garden? How do we get teachers over here? How do we get everyone to actually use it? So with that, we are now compiling a list of professional development. We're also working within the district with other departments within the district to help our teachers and our students become more effective and efficient in the school garden, as well as promoting and prompting our school garden to be satellite sites for our HISD farm. So within the district, you can go to the next slide. We work with 6 different departments, and within the district, those 6 different departments, of course, number 1 is nutrition services because that's who we're with. Then you work with facilities and maintenance to make sure that there's water sources or all the water sources working wherever they want to put a school garden. Then we also have to make sure that there's accessible walkways and make sure that they're ADA compliant. As you can see here on this picture, this is where we put in a school garden with some volunteers. In that picture, my mom and my daughter are there to help put that school garden together. So everybody is involved. Family and community engagement help us find volunteers. Academic services allows us to send out curriculum information to schools and and teachers in agriculture. Benefits helps us put together farmers markets. Partnerships helps us find all kinds of partners within the community, from Lowe's to Home Depot to oil companies to everywhere. And then grants, make sure that we stay on top of our USDA grants or any federal grant that we may come across. And then we have foundation, where in a foundation, if we come across a smaller grant where we do not have to do federal compliance, then we go through the foundation and use them. So we do, in the last couple of months, 6 or 7 months, it has been a whirlwind, but we're learning to put everything together and organize it so that it's more efficient for one person to manage all of these gardens. So thank you guys for your time.
Thank you, Ilana and Phyllicia. Really inspiring to hear about such huge districts doing all of this work. And I already have like 3 pages of notes written out of stuff that I'm gonna look into. So my name's Cassidy. I'm with Upland Unified School District, and I'm gonna talk more about the funding side of Farm to School and how we got to having a school district funded position. So really quickly, what does Farm to School look like in Upland Unified? So we kind of have like 3 pillars of what we aim for Farm to School. 1, we aim to provide organic seasonal produce for students and their families. All of our produce either goes to the students directly during garden club or to the families or into our cafeteria. We're in San Bernardino County, and we have community food producer certifications for our gardens, so we can serve in the cafeteria. We also aim to provide outdoor classrooms to host extended educational opportunities based on Common Core curriculum. So we are working on a more standardized garden club curriculum that's going to actually model what the students are learning in the class as well, which is going to be really great for everyone involved. We currently have, like I mentioned, 14 school gardens. It's actually kind of like 13 and a half. We're still working on getting one up and running just because of the rain that we've had in Southern California that we're not necessarily used to. But we do have school garden clubs in all of our schools, including the one that doesn't technically have a garden yet. We have students that are just really excited, so we've been meeting with them a couple times a month. But what we do is our garden clubs got so popular that we actually had to break up into cohorts. So we do 4 6-week cohorts a year at each of our sites. We cap garden clubs at 25 students, so that way we can make sure that everybody, there's not too many kids out there, and that everybody has enough space to communicate and to engage in the garden club. And we, so basically that gives us enough room for 1,000 elementary school students in garden club, and we usually get smaller numbers in our junior high and high school, so about 100 to 150 across our junior high and high school. So out of our 11,000 students, which actually is closer to 10,500, we end up getting about 10% of our school district enrolled in direct education with garden club, and then the rest of the students are involved in farm to school, with like actually seeing the garden produce on the salad bar, or communicating with our local farms, or eating the produce that come from our local farms that we work with. And then finally, we provide a space for community and family education and engagement. So we have a lot of family events. We are trying to think of different ways to get families involved in the gardens, particularly over the summer. So as I mentioned before, there's myself, who's the farm to school program manager. We have 2 farm to school program assistants that are part-time, and then we have 2 food corps service members. So food corps typically doesn't work over the summer, and then our program assistants, we have a little bit of turnover in those positions because it's usually students or people have more than one job. So what we're really hoping is to get more family and community engagement during the summer. And in Southern California, you can imagine that's one of the best times for produce growing in our gardens as well. So how we went from just the goal of a garden in every school to an outdoor classroom in every school is actually like identifying the need and kind of like knowing which way to go during COVID. So I started in 2018 as an intern, and I'll get into the timeline as it pertains to our funding in the next slide. But I just started with the goal that was given to me of like, we want a garden in every school, which is awesome. We had a few gardens that teachers were running, and we had some classes that would go out and use the gardens. So we really just hit the ground running, and by March 2020, we had I think around 7 or 8 gardens. We actually opened 3 gardens in the month before we shut down for COVID. So we kind of had to shift, and we spent, a better part of a year and a half out there just pretty much growing produce for the community, getting out to the community. But then when we came back, we thought we have to shift to identify what the schools need from us in these school gardens, and it's an outdoor classroom space. So I've included some pictures here of our food corps service members, our garden clubs. Almost all of our gardens, we're working on getting like classroom seating. So whether it's tree stumps in one of our gardens, or it's picnic tables, or even just getting like foldable, almost like TV tray looking things, or clipboards, we're looking at ways that we can make sure that students can actually be out in the garden to learn. And that we can actually use it as an outdoor classroom space. And that also includes doing some like outdoor whiteboards and teaching stations. So this is a big slide, but really I just wanted to show how we grew since the 2017-2018 school year to where we are now. So in the 2017-2018 school year, you'll see I have the funding source, the program sorry, something's blocking it on my, okay. The program staffing and growth, and then our program impact. So in 2017, 2018, this was the school year before I started, we had a wonderful funder, Randall Lewis Foundation, that came and as a philanthropic donation was donating money through a local college that then was hiring student interns to work at Upland Unified. So we had 2 part-time student interns, and then like I mentioned, about 3 school gardens. And at that time, we maybe had about 50 students involved in regular garden clubs. Fast forward to 2018-19, we made the shift to 1 full-time student intern. And that just allowed for 1 person to really like take on grant writing, take on organization, take on communication. And we just found at that time that that model of 1 full-time person to do that planning part really helped a lot. This is also gearing up to the year where we were awarded the USDA Farm to School Implementation Grant. So in the 2019-2020 year, we really had a lot of things change for the program. This is really like one of the first like huge changes that we saw in our program. So of course, every year Randall Lewis Foundation has supported our Farm to School program, which is just fantastic. We also, like I mentioned, had the USDA Farm to School grant. We started to look into the Lowe's Toolbox for Education grant. We got the Sprouts Healthy Communities grant, and we got some Whole Kids Foundation grants for some individual gardens. So really my position when I started, I just hit the ground running with grant writing. We were really able to gain a lot of funding that year through grants, which was fantastic for our growth. Because going into the 2020-21 school year, we were had 1 full-time farm to school coordinator. So that was my position being paid partially through the philanthropic donation and partially through the Farm to School Implementation Grant. We had 10 school gardens when we opened for the 21-22 school year. And then we had 2 food corps members. So originally we had our 2 food corps members at 2 sites each, or at 2 sites, 1 each, and now we have them at 2 sites each. So we were able to increase our numbers then as well. But you can see here, as we started the 2020-21 school year, as we ended rather, we had 10 school gardens, and our numbers went up to about 150 students in garden club and 750 in food corps. And these are students directly using the gardens at their site. But during COVID, we did have to go virtual. So we were, though, putting out virtual garden club and virtual food corps. And we were taking our computers out to the garden and showing the kids what was growing and harvesting all of our produce to get out to the community. So where the tides really shifted with our district is in the 21-22 school year. We started to research a little bit about LCAP funding. So in California, LCAP is the Local Control Accountability Plan, and it essentially is a community feedback of, so we get funding from the government, and then we get community feedback on what kind of things they would like to see, what kind of programs and goals they would like to see funded, and they give some feedback for that. And it's really great to hear from the community about what they're seeing success in. So I'll show on the next slide the executive summary that we wrote out, and it came with so much research. So we actually started to research LCAP in December 2019, and it didn't actually go into the LCAP plan until October 2021 was when I officially started as the Farm to School Program Manager. It was huge for our district to provide us with that support. It was so exciting because within nutrition services, we have our director, Ksenia Glenn, and then we have an operations manager of nutrition services. And then this position was written as an operations manager of Farm to School. So not only was I able to start taking care of our gardens, building new gardens, overseeing garden club, overseeing food corps, but I also was able to start taking some of the things off of the director and the other operations managers' plate, like communicating with all our local farms, increasing our Farm to School produced produce or procured produce, wellness committee, just some of these things that don't fit inside of a typical operations day-to-day, but we still need to get done on the nutrition services side. And actually, now we're procuring about 50% of our produce from local farms. So not even just in the garden world has our district changed and has Farm to School expanded, but within our nutrition services department, just Farm to School has expanded a lot because of the implementation of this position. And then again, different organizational grants like Action for Healthy Kids, Whole Kids Foundation, again, our philanthropic donation from Miranda Lewis Foundation, as well as the CDFA Farm to School grant. So again, like I said, a huge portion of my job is writing grants. Now we're kind of at that point where we are looking at the grants and looking at whether it's supplies based or staffing based. What is fantastic about the CDFA Farm to School grant is that it is you can spend money on staffing, which is awesome because you can have $1 million in supplies, but if you don't have anyone to do the job, then that supplies just kind of sits. So with our CDFA Farm to School grant, we were able to hire a part-time farm to school program assistant, and because of that, our garden club numbers almost doubled, or basically over doubled. So we went from 150 virtual kind of part-time garden club kids, where we kind of started to let cohorts come onto campus during the year after COVID, or that 21-22 school year, to then having 360 students enrolled in garden club. And we were really excited. We were getting closer to that garden in every school goal. We also increased our food corps numbers, as well as started to plan these farm to school field days. So getting students out into the garden to be part of that project. This school year that we're in right now, we were basically able to show our district like, hey, look at how big of a difference it made to have a farm to school program assistant, because before that it was me out there taking care of the gardens, teaching garden clubs. I had like 8 garden clubs a week at one point. And as happy as I was to do that, we were kind of hitting a wall in our growth and in our expansion. And we knew that there were more schools and more students wanting to be involved in garden club. So our district very graciously started to fund a farm to school program assistant as well. So now we had one through CDFA and one through the district, which was awesome. So just this past year, we were able to double our numbers in garden club again. So from 360 to 750 students enrolled in garden club, which has been fantastic. But again, we're feeling that there's an expansion coming. Like we can tell that there are students that just want to be in garden club, and there are parents that want their students to have this opportunity and want their students to have access to garden grown produce and that experience of learning how to grow your own food. And at the junior high and high school level, there's a really big push for wellness clubs and cooking clubs, and that's something that Farm to School can provide as well. So we went ahead and applied for another CDFA Farm to School grant. So going into next year, we will have the Farm to School Program Manager position, which is still funded through LCAP. We are going to have our Farm to School Program Assistant funded through LCAP. And then we're going to have 2 Farm to School Program Assistants funded through our CDFA Farm to School grant. So our team will grow again. We are also going to have a 3rd Food Corps service member, which is going to be fantastic. So we're looking at our numbers going up even more across the board. We're going to increase our food corps numbers, increase our garden club numbers. We're going to be able to do some field trips. So if you look, our numbers from reaching about 2,000 students, and this is with direct education, not just seeing like our produce on the salad bar or seeing a flyer in the cafeteria, like direct garden education, from about 2,000 students this year to about I think 5,000, I should have added that up, but between 5,000 and 6,000 next year because of the addition of these positions. And what is so amazing about our district is we've been able to come back and say, hey, that was awesome. That was super successful. Thank you so much. If we could get one more person, or if we could extend this position a little bit more, or extend this these hours a little bit more, we'll be able to expand our numbers, and we've been able to show that as well. So I truly believe in grant writing, nonprofit, farm to school work in the school district as well, is that success attracts success. So we're able to say, hey, okay, this worked out really well, and then we can expand our program. So I kind of went over this, but this is just the different types of funding sources that we've tapped into. So our federal grants, our industry grants, monetary donations, and then supplies donations have been really helpful, of just writing to Sprouts like, hey, we are having a garden day, like grant money is so specific, I can't really buy water bottles and granola bars with it. Can you donate us some water bottles and granola bars? And they've been able to do that. Or grocery outlet bargain market, like same kind of thing. So really knowing your grants intimately as well, and what you can and can't purchase, helps you then to look for other funding sources for other items. So just really quick, this is our executive summary that we wrote the 1920 school year when we were first asking to be included in LCAP. So we did a program summary, we did program personnel. So who will this be supporting? What will this impact be? And then also we tied it to the current, at that time, the LCAP goals that the district had. So now our LCAP goals are for the 22-23 school year that we're in right now, where that students will be safe, connected, and engaged, students will be academically prepared, and students will be college and career empowered. And Farm to School is falling within safe, connected, and engaged. We provide after school opportunities. We are really engaged in our schools with low income students and high free reduced lunch numbers. And so this funding that we requested was not what we ended up being awarded. We kind of had to come to an agreement. And then after we did this, we also took the Farm to School program manager job, related it to another job in the district, wrote a job description, gave them the total calculations, including benefits. So that it wasn't we tried to do as much work as possible to gear up and say, okay, here's what we're asking for. Here's the footwork that's done. What does this look like to you? And what do you think about this? And then I just want to also put this out there that when you're looking for your school district to support your Farm to School program, your school garden program, any program, it's important that you kind of do that footwork and you give them that feedback of how you're going to be supporting their mission and value statements. So for us, we start every presentation in the district with how are we supporting Upland Unified's mission, values, priorities, and goals? Well, we're definitely providing values of well-being, empathy, service, community, equity, and then we are definitely providing students with the opportunity to feel all of these things: safe, connected, and engaged, academically prepared, college and career empowered. Farm to School opens so many doors for students and provides them a lot of different opportunities to learn what they're learning in the classroom in an outdoor setting. So before I go on to the last slide, I just want to say once again that if you are in a position right now where your Farm to School program is grant funded, I know it can be very stressful. And I know from experience, I was in that position of writing the grants to pay for my own position. But I will say that doing this footwork and giving your district the tools to understand how important Farm to School can be within the district. So not next to the district, not after school, within the school day. So that cafeteria to farm connection, local farm connection, that garden to cafeteria connection. We're trying to work more with our wellness centers and the SEL connection that we can make, social emotional learning in the gardens. The nutrition education that we can provide students and their families. The list really goes on, and that's not even to touch on all the different subjects students are learning in the classroom, from math to art to English, that we can enforce in Garden Club and reinforce what they're learning in Garden Club. This has been, the last 5 or 6 years of just really getting to know our district very intimately, and our district values and priorities and goals very intimately, and really understanding and going to those meetings and having and being part of those events to realize, okay, here's what the district is really looking for in their programs, and how can Farm to School support that. So that being said, we are also part of the district-led school garden promising practices team. So Tristana touched on that a little in the beginning. And we are looking to interview other district-led school garden programs and other district-led farm to school programs for our promising practices document. So I threw a QR code up there. There's a Google form. The way that we're thinking this will go is we'll get the feedback, and we will contact districts that have some really valuable, every district has very valuable things to share. And so we're looking for some of those best practices and some of those promising practices that we can share with districts that have been doing this for 50 years and maybe need a refresh, or districts that are just beginning. And that's it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Cassidy, Ilana, Phyllicia. If you could go to the next slide, we are going to head over to our Q&A portion of our webinar. And if any of you have to jump, this webinar will go for an hour and 15 minutes. If any of you have to jump, I would love to receive your feedback for this webinar and to understand what any future webinar topics that you'd like to dive into. So the link is going into the chat for our survey. Would love if you could fill that out. But we will then go on to questions. So we've got a bunch here in the Q&A. Alana, actually, I'm going to start with you. I know you answered Sarah's question about how it took or what it took to develop the Eat What You Grow certification. I know you typed that answer out, and thank you so much, but I'm wondering if you could share that live with folks in case anyone can't read the answer to the question about how, what did it take to develop this certification, and how much time, people, kind of who and what supported that work?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for elevating it. So the Garden to Cafeteria program in Chicago started many years ago and was formalized in 2012. But it was years in the making, and it was a partnership between the school district, the Chicago Botanic Gardens, one of our school nonprofit partners, a charter school. It's called the Academy for Global Citizenship, which really centers sustainability in their mission, and another organization called Family Farms, now known as Good Food Catalyst. So there were a lot of people around the table trying to make this happen, because before this policy wasn't put in place, I think there was a lot of red tape around schools utilizing edible gardens in the classroom and cafeteria. And so there was pushback during that time saying, we want our students to be able to take advantage of the amazing produce that they grow and build relationships with their food in this way. And so we need to make a policy so that it'll be approved and make it safe. And there was a movement at that time with other school districts, from what I gather. This is actually before my time at the district. But there was a school district in Denver that was also very actively working on garden to cafeteria programming and a policy of their own. And I know that the person who worked on that consulted Chicago in creating our own policy. So there were a lot of actors in the room. And I think that what's really powerful about that movement during that time period is that it does provide a template that you can use and learn about and see what's included, what's not, and create a standard operating procedure for your own school district. Work with your legal team to create a policy that gets pushed. And I think now we're in a place where the links between students growing and eating their own food and the benefits to their wellness is so clear. And I think we're in a different place than we were in 2012. So hopefully there will be a bit more ease in advocating for the value of a policy like this. So we also tied it to our local school wellness policy, saying that anyone growing edible gardens, we're making adjustments this year to say anyone growing edible gardens needs to be Eat What You Grow certified. And we've been making revisions over the past few years while I've been in this position to change the training so that it's a little bit more accessible and more widely participated in. So we're kind of taking this approach of making this mandatory for schools, all schools growing edible gardens, regardless of if they use the produce in the cafeteria or not, while making it easier to go through the training, hoping that all of the valuable information in the training will be just more broadly utilized and learned from, like our teachers will learn from it more widely in our district. I hope that answers that question.
Amazing. Thank you, Ilana. I really appreciate it. I also put into the chat, Whole Kids Foundation developed a Garden to Cafeteria toolkit in partnership with Slow Food USA. Andrew Nowak, who was a part of Slow Food USA at the time, helped set up the Denver Public Schools Garden to Cafeteria program. So he wrote the toolkit. It's kind of like a step-by-step guide for how to set this up within your school district food services. And Chicago Public Schools is featured as one of the examples for how to do this successfully. So also check that out if you're interested in setting up garden to cafeteria programs in your district. Great, awesome. So let's move along here. We've got a question. Does anyone have experience with running gardens in juvenile detention centers? Pantaleon from Lawrence, Kansas Public Schools is in the process of starting one here now. Great, Phyllicia, please take it away. And also if anyone, and I will open this up to everyone. If there are any questions that you also have resources, please share in the chat. I'm sure you all have some resources as well. So Phyllicia. Thank you.
Running school gardens in the juvenile detention center it's very difficult. I did that before I came to the school district. So in essence, you have to make sure that you have a good relationship with the guards. All of the tools are locked away. You have to check them in, check them out, make sure that the students do not take them. It's jail, so they can't have any extra tools. Also, whenever we did lessons, I had to bring in paper, pencils. There were no staplers. We could not staple paper. So there's a different type of stapler that you use that punches a hole in the paper and kind of makes it into like a little hole puncher. The kids that are in the program for the juvenile detention center are usually well-behaved kids. You usually have a guard that's with you, but we ran it through Harris County Juvenile Detention Services with partnership to our cooperative extension, Texas Agri-Life Cooperative Extension. It was a program where we were trying to do a farm to school program and horticulture training program. I left the program because I needed to make a little bit extra money to survive in life, but I think that anybody that goes into that area has to understand that these kids are in jail, and some of them are in jail because of reasons that we don't know, but we have to always keep our guards up, because I've had incidents where kids tried to escape and it became a complete shutdown in the guards. And so sometimes you have to understand you're going to be locked in there, but tools have to be locked away. You can set up a garden however you want to grow it. The kids can take the vegetables back with them into their cells. They cannot take any tools or pencils with them. So I hope that answers your question.
Great, thank you. And maybe Pantaleon, you can follow up with Phyllicia afterward to hear more details if you'd like. Awesome, let's move right along. Karen did ask if Phyllicia would share the questions that she used in the school garden census. And Karen, Phyllicia put those into the chat, so please shout if you didn't receive that, but everyone else, those are there. And Phyllicia, I'm wondering if you'd be okay with me adding the school garden census questions to the resource handout. Would that be okay to share out publicly? Okay, great.
Yes,
so everyone, I
have the MTSS planning worksheet as well, so I'll drop that in there just in case anybody wants to figure out how to put their tier system together.
Great, thank you so much. Well, it always is the case as during the presentation we identify additional resources that can go into the handout. So you will be receiving, everyone who registered for the webinar will be receiving a link to the recording as well as the most up-to-date resource handout. So there'll be even more links in there. Okay, great. Let's see. We have a question about kind of sustainably funded positions for garden coordinators that provide more than part-time work in a competitive wage. Cassidy definitely dove into how her district approaches funding. So I'm not sure if you have anything additional about that, Cassidy, but and Ilana, I'd also you both to share how your positions are funded or how you seek to I know many of you don't have paid garden coordinators, but if you have any thoughts or maybe potential plans for how you're going to be doing that in the future, I invite you if you have anything to share there as well.
Tristan, I do have something to add on that. So with our, so like I mentioned with my position, the farm to school program manager, we based it off of the current operations manager position with nutrition services. I also did a whole like comp sheet of what other districts are paying their program managers, that job description, and then how similar what I was doing was to that, to kind of prove that what we were asking for was fair. And it is then also within our own district, like pay scale, we just fit it in right there. We didn't do anything differently. So in terms of being on the district side, we tried to do it as simple as possible, as streamlined as possible. With our farm to school program assistants, when I was an intern up until I got hired as the program manager, October 2021, I was making $20 an hour. I had no benefits and no paid time off, no paid leave or anything. I was essentially an independent contractor. So when I was writing the job description and thinking about the farm to school program assistant position, knowing that we live in Southern California, I wanted to make sure that we were making it as competitive as possible. We do still pay as independent contractors because that's just what's working for our district right now. But we pay $25 an hour, knowing that a lot of the people that we get are students, have no other jobs, and then it's typically 25 to 30 hours a week. So we found that to be really successful. I'll pass it back over to Phyllicia or Ilana if they have anything to add, but really my advice would be to look at your area right now, look at what other programs are paying or other organizations are paying for similar work, and then see how you can make it competitive, but also livable for the people that are working with you.
I can also chime in just to give some perspective onto how my position was funded, is that we did write a grant a couple of years ago that funded another position for a year. And then the work was so immense that we had a case to actually bring the person, which was my position, onto school board funding. So there is some pathways for creating something that is grant funded and then showing its value and making a case for all of the work that you're doing, like Cassidy mentioned throughout this webinar. That's actually really compelling to create a more permanent position for the long term.
Great. Thank you both so much. Phyllicia, let me know if you have anything else to add to that. Otherwise, we will jump on to the next question. It looks like there's also a couple of resources in the chat. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, my supervisor just jumped into the chat and said that our positions were funded the same way as fresh fruits and vegetables to bring in nutrition educators. So that was all.
Amazing. Thank you. Thanks for jumping in there and sharing. Let's see. I guess just to go off of that, Cassie, there was a question in the chat. If you could share the job descriptions that you've been chatting about, and if possible, the pay scale comparisons, that would be super helpful. I think there was also a question in relation to that in the Q&A. If you could elaborate or repeat your responsibilities as the farm to school program manager.
Yes. So Tristana, can I send you it as a, I want to make sure I'm sharing the right one.
Yeah, of course.
So if I could send it to you, and then Tristana can share it as a resource as far as like the job descriptions and everything. So, and for as far as what I do, just really everything farm to school. And I know that seems like redundant, but I mean everything from grant writing. I do a lot of grant writing for nutrition services as well. Grant management, gardens. I have physically built all of our school gardens, so I'm out there building the gardens. A lot of Saturday work days. My car looks like a maintenance truck. so it's really just like, yeah, everything garden, everything school garden related, teaching garden clubs, harvesting, getting produce out to the community, communicating with our local farmers, supporting our director however she needs help. Right now, I'm also in charge of the rollout of our SB 1383 compliance, which realizing now this is not everyone's in California, but it's our food waste recovery. And composting law. So I'm going to be doing the rollout and the planning for that as well. And our wellness committee, wellness policy rewrite, triennial assessment, everything that goes along with the wellness policy. But yeah, I'd be happy to share that job description. I'll just make sure I get the right copy over to Tristana.
Awesome, thank you. There's so many great questions here. Could you all talk about school site food waste? There's a question about, have your districts simultaneously put in place programs to deal with school site food waste? I know this is often a question that comes with the implementation of school garden programs, as well as enhancing food service programming. How have you all been handling school site food waste as it's in relation to farm to school or school garden programs?
So I'll jump in here and say this, because school lunch is, most school lunches are highly processed, the food waste can't really go into compost. So if it is like a salad bar or the sandwich bar, then we have some schools that are doing composting on their own. And we just partnered with sustainability department, energy sustainability department, recently to put together a food waste. We're in the process, it's like beginning stages of all this. It's just been meetings so far of processing food waste across a handful of school districts to compost. We're starting a small little soil yard on our district farm just to help with what we have on our district farm to, as far as soil and composting is concerned. We also use those same practices on the farm when kids come for field trips, and we tell them compost, landfill, brown, green, so on and so forth. So because so much of the school lunch is highly processed, a lot of it is just going to go in the trash. But to start that entire program, you have to start it with a pilot program. I would say if you're in a school district, partner with either nutrition, the food service department, or sustainability department, or whatever department that you guys have. And then that way there's more funding for everyone at the table to try to get more schools to participate with food waste. There's also a USDA grant about that too. It should be coming back around about composting and food waste.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Phyllicia. I think because we are past time, we'll go ahead and close this out. Cassidy, if you don't mind going on to the next slide, please, that would be great. Thank you all so much for being here. Just really appreciate the engagement in the chat, all the extensive resources that everyone has been sharing with one another, as well as your great questions. I'm sorry we didn't get to all of them today. And then huge thank you to Cassidy, Ilana, and Phyllicia for being here, doing the work that you do, and sharing with this great community so that other districts can be just as successful as you all, and we can all learn from each other and continue to grow and have a garden in every school. If you go to the next slide, again, once more, here is the link to the survey. Would love to know what you thought, and love to know what other topics would be helpful for you to learn about as you grow your own school garden programs. The survey will also pop up when the Zoom ends. So thank you all so much. Thanks for being here, and thank you to our amazing presenters. We'll see you next month in May to do part 2 of this webinar series, hearing from 3 other school districts from other sizes and other locations across the country, focusing more on the school district community engagement side of things. So hope to see you there. Thanks so much for being here.